Challenging.
Transformative.
A bitch.
Confusing.
Moonshot.
Reborn.
Goals.
Innovation.
Good morning, I'm Sophie, and my mission today is to guide you through the best digital e-commerce event of the year, Lengow Day.
Hi, Sophia. How's it going?
Hi guys, yeah, everything's going really well, thanks. I'm just kicking off Lengow Day.
Nice, the world changes this year, so I hope our conference will help everyone to understand this new world better.
Oh, thanks, Miguel. I was supposed to say that.
I really hope all participants will enjoy the conference program, have one-to-one meeting planned to really grow their business.
Cool, cheers guys,
Yeah,
thanks. Really cool team. Well, all right, as I memorized it, here goes. So the world has changed a lot over this remarkable year. So we organised some inspiring keynotes and roundtables to help you understand this new world better. Enjoy. Now I'm just gonna get into my new role. Is it the same with you? When I wake up in the morning, I'm in warrior mode, like me versus the world. And then I arrive at the office and I'm ready to take on the day. No, wait. Me versus the day. That reminds me of something. The Amazon versus everyone else problematic. Who doesn't sell on Amazon these days? Come to think of it, who doesn't shop on Amazon? Just how can other channels compete with Amazon? Well, expert Rick Watson explores that in his keynote, just how other channels are preparing and taking on the challenge of Amazon.
Okay, thank you so much, Sophie. I really appreciate you handing it over, and extremely excited to be in front of this international audience today at Lengow Day. We have an exciting topic, and I'm sure you're all waiting to hear about it. Just a bit about who I am. My name is Rick Watson. I am e-commerce consultant internationally. I've been in the e-commerce industry as an entrepreneur and as an operator for the past 20 years. Companies like Channel Advisor, Barnes & Noble, Pitney Bowes, both in the sort of domestic and cross-border industries. And super interesting topic today, and it really has to do with the strategy of all the big players in the e-commerce world. And in particular, we all know who the king is in the e-commerce world right now, and that's Amazon. And so the big question in everyone's minds always is, can anyone knock off the king or the queen, as it were? So I think the answer is a complicated one, and you have to look at first, sort of survey the players and who they are. What is their position in the market? Where have they come from, and where are they going to? And then that will allow us to get some kind of analysis as to what's happening in the world. I think before we get started into the other players, it helps to reset a little bit about just how big Amazon is as a business. In terms of their full retail business, in 2018, they were about $300 billion. In 2019, they were about $335 billion in GMV at retail, and that's distributed between first party, which is products that Amazon owns and sells, and then third party or marketplace sales that are through other sellers, many of whom may be in this audience that sell on Amazon today. And the ratio between first party and third party is currently somewhere north of 60% third party and increasing in that ratio. And perhaps by the time you're seeing this, this is based on the end of 2019 numbers. We haven't seen any really surveys to judge the effects of COVID or 2020 on these numbers, but assume that that's a relatively good number. First party, the thing that Jeff Bezos likes to say is that First party is actually shrinking and has been shrinking considerably over the last few years as a percentage of overall Amazon. So first party is growing slower, something like 15% a year, whereas the third party business is growing 25%. And even in certain countries across the world, it's accelerating much more than that internationally in places like India, etc. So now you just get an idea of just the sheer massive scale of Amazon, over $300 billion. And you get a sense of the type of major challenge that these other players are dealing with. Facebook and Google have no major significant marketplaces to speak of from a brand point of view and for people to sell. Started as social media platforms and search engines. Of course, you can sell certain things on Instagram, but it's very nascent compared to what really the powerhouse of Amazon. Some of the other things that people forget about Amazon is really just their scale and size and the number of multi-billion-dollar businesses that they run. Advertising on Amazon, which wasn't even a thing 10 years ago, is now a $14 billion business and is growing 40% year over year. So it's a huge opportunity for sellers. 10, 15 years ago, when you put your product on Amazon, all you really had was Amazon SEO per se. You could optimize your product and try to be good at operations, but you couldn't really do anything else to push yourself to the top. That has changed in a big way in the past 5 years, and it is one of the number one ways that you're able to get exposure on the brand. And brands that aren't advertising are not able to get exposure. So this is something else. In fact, Amazon is really the fastest growing multi-billion-dollar business on Amazon today, totally. If you look at another big business for Amazon, you were talking about AWS. It's a $35 billion business. It's growing 20% year over year. It's not really related to our discussion today, but it just helps get your head around. When we talk about Amazon, we think intuitively about going on the app and buying something online, but we forget about the massive resources behind Amazon and their major supply chain direction that they're going in. It's very likely that they will be one of the most influential logistics companies in the world over the next 5 or 10 years. They have launched an independent third-party shipping service in the UK just in the last 3 months after having a pilot in the US. So it remains to be seen how much they'll be pushing that into retailers. So we're talking about massive amounts of GMV, over $300 billion in GMV that's at play here and growing. Amazon is not without challenges. They have a number of massive challenges to solve. I would say the number one risk to Amazon, without question, on the traditional marketplace is trust. And it's talked a lot about by European and American regulators. Brands and consumers have continually had issues with trust on Amazon, in particular, not just trust, but in specific verticals, baby, beauty, luxuries, any fashion that's not essential. Most people don't buy on Amazon or have started to become a lot more wary of buying on Amazon because of the authenticity of the sellers, of the authenticity of the items that are offered. And these challenges are only increasing. Of course, since Amazon has been in business and since they've operated a third-party marketplace, there have always been complaints from brands about what is the number one topic? Competition from Amazon. Amazon will just copy your product. Everyone has known this from day one and have agreed to it anyway just to be on Amazon. Here's the big problem. Amazon is really terrible at introducing new brands. I mean, that is something outside of the Amazon Basics brand and their Pins On brand. Most other brands represent a small share of Amazon. And the likelihood of them copying you and being better than you in your brand is actually a lot smaller than most people think. And so that is actually a weak spot for them because private label or house brands are actually increasing margins, some of the best retailers in the world do a much better job than Amazon of introducing house brands because they have that brick and mortar footprint. They have a place for consumers to touch and feel this brand before they just see it in an Amazon search result. Another category that's a challenge for Amazon is electronics, and as well as any kind of branded merchandise. Just try to get an Apple, any kind of official plug or connector or anything on Amazon. I actually defy you to do that. You will spend all day and you will still not be sure if you bought the right thing. So Amazon is not always the best place to shop. What they do have is consumer awareness, and over 60-70% of all consumers are searching on Amazon for your products, even if you're not there. So you might as well be there anyway. Another big challenge for Amazon is actually something that a lot of people don't know is over 80% of the searches on Amazon are unbranded. And so even from a consumer intent point of view, Amazon is becoming more and more a white goods or private label marketplace rather than a place that's friendly for brand. That's a big challenge for them long term in terms of their growth. I would say the other big point about Amazon is like, okay, how big are they? How are sellers doing on Amazon? It's like, just to give you some idea, there are about 3 million sellers reported through industry experts, people like Marketplace Pulse. At the end of last year, reported about 3 million sellers on Amazon, only up about 5% year over year. If you think about, okay, Amazon is growing 15% first party, 25% third party. Let's just use the United States as an example. And there's only 5% growth in sellers in the US. What does that tell you implicitly? It means that there's a lot of consolidation in the market. The bigger is getting bigger, and the smaller players are being squeezed out. Even now, you're starting to see major players starting to buy up FBA businesses and to consolidate them to take advantage of this Amazon brand search equity is there. I would say one of the final challenges of Amazon that a lot of people don't talk about is the penetration of Chinese sellers. Compared to 10 years ago when Chinese seller penetration on Amazon were probably less than 10%, now we're dealing with 50-60% of penetration of all seller count on Amazon are actually based in China. And this is specifically for the US marketplace, which is the most developed marketplace. And so this trend is coming everywhere to all marketplaces. And so why is this a challenge? Because you're still dealing with the fact that the trend on Amazon is to more and more unbranded goods. And I say all this and with the positives and negatives of Amazon to paint sort of a very specific picture about Amazon. This is the state of the world. This is not to say that Amazon is not a fantastic company. They're probably one of the most innovative companies on the planet. But for a competitor to actually take down Amazon and to sort of fulfill the premise of this talk, they really have to look at what are the weaknesses, how we take advantage of the weaknesses of Amazon and turn that into something that's great. So let's actually start looking at some of those players. And so if you look at some of the players out there, you really look at 3 main names. I would say we're actually putting Alibaba to the side for this conversation. They're this whole other animal, obviously primarily an Asian entity, but they have tentacles everywhere. But Google, Facebook, and the famous one in the press that everyone likes to talk about right now is Shopify. And I would actually contend that Google and Facebook are really the only 2 that are coming for Amazon directly. They are trying to, first of all, capture or recapture some of the e-commerce search share that's happening directly on Amazon now, and ensure that consumers are buying on their platforms. Shopify is coming at it from a very different direction. They're a software company, yet everyone says they're competing with Amazon. They're not direct competition to Amazon in any shape or form. However, the worldview that they represent is quite a bit different. So let's dive into Google for a second. Google is, I mean, everyone knows Google. There's not anything I can tell you about Google that you don't already know. They're fantastic about satisfying intent-driven searches. The beautiful thing about Google from an e-commerce point of view is that anything you type into the search engine signifies user intent. I want to do X. I want to buy Y. I want to research Z. These are all things that marketers, brands, retailers can take advantage of, advertise against, and find the solution. The big problem for Google over the past so many years has been the increasing share of searches that Amazon keeps getting year after year. It started 5, 10, 15%. Now it's well over 60% of all commerce-focused searches actually start on Amazon and not Google. And that is a huge problem for Google that they have never been able to get in front of and never developed any viable solutions for. You know, they've kind of gone back and forth between shopping and shopping actions and marketplace and express and all of these different initiatives. None of them seem to gain a massive amount of traction. There are quite a number of them that you should be doing as brands and likely are, especially shopping, Google Shopping and AdWords being, the biggest by far. But any other marketplace related initiative has really fallen down with regards to trust, selection, assortment, having all the brands that you might want to see there, and then really a reason, like what's the point of me shopping here versus on Amazon or directly on the site, and the conflict between Google's mission of pushing traffic off the site versus keeping them on Google's site. So that's a big problem when your entire business model runs on getting people off the site. One of the problems that is common to both Google and Facebook that they have competing with somebody like Amazon, it's really the same problem that every advertising company has when they try to analyze what is Amazon and how do I compete with them. As an advertising company, you don't own any products, you don't have to service any direct consumers, and you basically wake up every morning and print money. You look at your bank account, it's like, how much money did I print yesterday? And the reason is because they're not doing anything in the physical world. They're just provide a search box that people type into and serve ads against it. And that's really true for Google, for Facebook as well. Now, they're fantastic in doing that, and there is billions of dollars in engineering investment to do that properly, and they're properly the winner of that. But all of those skills does not actually make them able to compete with Amazon from an e-commerce point of view. And so the high margin of an advertising business is actually the biggest risk and the biggest downfall of any advertising company across the planet trying to directly compete with Amazon. And the reason is this: retail and e-commerce, as everyone in this audience knows, it's not a high margin business. You're not going to make 80, 90% margins like you do in a software business or an advertising business. You're going to make 25%, you're going to make 50% at wholesale, but then what happens on the back end? You have returns, you have fraud, you have software fees, you have quite a number of things to control that you don't have to worry about in an advertising business. And so a lot of people don't consider that when it's like, oh, why doesn't Google just do something different? And the reality is, if you are nearing $1 trillion company and you're talking about investing in a business that's is growing slower, you don't have a clear philosophy to beat Amazon, and the margin is significantly lower than your primary business, it's very hard for a board of directors to put dollars behind that initiative. So that's a big challenge to them. That said, I think particularly for Google, the biggest challenge that they can solve is consideration. Google exists not necessarily at the beginning of the funnel. You don't necessarily have to go there to learn about a brand. But if you're looking for something, you're trying to find something authentic. You're trying to find something from independent third parties, good reviews, all things that are valuable in the consideration process. These are huge opportunities for Google to improve on and monetize if they were to launch something at scale like an independent marketplace that they were going to put a lot of weight behind in the future. So that's Google. They're not challenging Amazon anytime soon, just so that's clear. Facebook is a little bit different story. If you look at what's Facebook, Facebook is basically three things. One is the big blue Facebook app. Second is Instagram. And third is WhatsApp. Mostly I'm going to focus on the first two, which is the big blue Facebook app and Instagram. In terms of mainstream brands, Facebook, actually both of these are super relevant. Facebook and paid social advertising is one of the most effective forms of advertising for brands. It's usually where brands have one of the larger parts of their budget. It is super effective. It can create engagement when it's done right. The thing that Facebook is realizing, however, is that they're sending a heck of a lot of traffic out to brands to buy something, and they would like to have a piece of that. In fact, in the US alone, Facebook has identified between $200 and $400 billion in opportunity in just lost conversion that falls off in between the time someone clicks on a Facebook ad and pays for an item on a site. And so this one insight is really Facebook's entire reasoning for trying to enter e-commerce. And anyone who's watched some of Mark Zuckerberg's talks this year, one of the things he talks about is commerce is one of my top 3 priorities. And I would actually say this is the one thing that Facebook has over Google, even though they're both advertising companies. Facebook is a little bit younger and more nimbler. Google has never made commerce a number 1 priority or in their list of very top priorities across the entire company. Facebook has now, and they're starting to invest behind that. In particular, if you look at some of the success that beauty and fashion have had with Instagram shopping, that has created tens and hundreds of millions of dollars GMV very quickly in a time frame. Now, it's nothing like Amazon's scale at this stage, but the unique thing about Instagram is that it's a place where you follow, find, and interact with brands. This is actually something that is unique in the world, number 1, and it fits into an Amazon weakness. Amazon is not great for branded searches. It's not where I go to interact with brands. It's where I go to buy something, like research quickly and buy something. But it's not a place I go to see the new line for the latest fashion brand that I like. A lot of that starts on Instagram or the brand site, or even more so sometimes than the brand site itself. So those are some of the assets that Instagram and Facebook has. Obviously, Facebook and Instagram both have a huge user base to their advantage. And I think if anyone has sort of the ability, not necessarily the execution, to follow Amazon in this space, it would be, I would bet on Facebook over any other player for the reasons that I mentioned, particularly in the advertising space. I think one of the final companies I want to talk about is Shopify. Shopify right now, it's a super fascinating company. It is one that, because they're also in the e-commerce space and they have one of the fastest growing e-commerce businesses, software businesses in the world right now, people are very quick to compare them to Amazon. Oh, they must be trying to take down Amazon. It's Shopify versus Amazon. And so I think out of the gate, if you're in e-commerce, it's very clear to everyone that this is not a Coke versus Pepsi challenge between Amazon or Shopify, like Amazon and Walmart are competing, for instance, which Walmart, I don't think, has any chance to compete with Amazon from an e-commerce point of view, at least not anytime soon. Now, they have other retail and grocery advantages, but I digress. In terms of Shopify, let's just compare the two companies for a minute. We mentioned the over $335 billion GMV that's on Amazon today. Well, what GMV do all of their merchants power, which is about 1 million plus merchants? They power about $61 billion in GMV, and their growth rate from 2018 to 2019 was about 50%. So they went from 2018, $41 billion. And their growth rate has only accelerated throughout 2020. And so I have no doubt that their growth rate is going to be higher this year, potentially even 60, 75% growth, because they're fast becoming the default e-commerce platform of choice for a lot of up-and-coming brands. So what does it mean? So let's take all my statements to the side for a second and set up the competition. What would it take for Shopify GMV to overtake Amazon GMV? Well, if you look at GMV, means gross merchandise value, which is really just the total number of the sales of goods that are accounted for in the platform. So if you buy something for $100, that counts as $100 GMV. It's not revenue that you're taking in. It's just the commerce activity happening on the platform. And so if Shopify is growing at 50+% a year and Amazon is only growing 20, 25% a year, that means at some point, if that continues, Amazon can be overtaken from a GMV point of view just by the Shopify platform itself. And if you just run the numbers straight, Shopify GMV will actually pass Amazon third-party GMV, which is about $200 billion today, but will obviously keep growing, probably 25% and might slow. In probably the middle of 2024, if you just do the straight math from where it is now. This is not a prediction, but it's useful to understand that Shopify is the only one of these players that's even in the same ballpark of scale that they could be playing with in the next 5 years, which is sort of fascinating to think about. And so they're growing faster than any platform on the planet. They're actually, the platform is growing faster than any of Amazon's businesses, including their fastest growing business right now, which is advertising, which to me also fascinating. What are so why do people set up this comparison at all? Shopify is a software company. They make, on Shopify Plus, 0.25% of sales, or some monthly subscription fee. Why even compare them to Amazon? Shopify, to be honest, there's so many Shopify stores that sell on Amazon. So what is this competition about? I think the big thing that people like to speculate about is could Shopify build a marketplace? Could it take all of its merchants and then collect them and then start driving traffic to it? And I think the reason that is very attractive to a lot of brands is that most brands would like more sales. And so if the average brand owner, if you would ask them, it's if Shopify would send you new sales that you didn't advertise for, and would you be happy to pay Amazon or Shopify 10% for that sale, you would probably say yes. And so just those sorts of things start to set up the tension between these companies and their worldviews. I think the other thing that has caused some tension recently is the introduction of the Shopify Shop app, which is a consumer-focused tool which started to deal with shipping tracking, but now is also a place for you to follow brands that you've purchased. Additionally, you can even find brands around you that are using the Shopify POS system, which starts to act remarkably like a local marketplace. And so people start to read the tea leaves and start to anticipate in this direction, if Shopify were to go in this direction, is there a potential there? I think the negative case for this is Shopify is, by and large, number one, only a brand-focused company. Shopify benefits from a multi-channel world. It wants you to sell in as many places as possible, not only your brand Shopify store, but also on marketplaces, including Amazon. Shopify is only really harmed if Amazon eats all of e-commerce, or if any one player eats all of e-commerce. The more diversified e-commerce is, the better Shopify performs, because the more brands need a single home, to the extent that they're on Shopify. Obviously, there are competitors, but I'm just using Shopify almost as a reference point for one of the fastest growing e-commerce platforms today. They benefit from that world. I think another reason Shopify can be thought of sometimes as a competitor is that they're getting into payments. They're getting into fulfillment. These are very non-traditional areas for e-commerce platforms to get into. Normally, you have partners only with Stripe or with UPS and FedEx and TNT and other providers. Shopify is starting to want to own other parts of the e-commerce ecosystem and pick winners in its partner program. So those are some of the things that kind of point you in the direction of Shopify competing with Amazon. I think, the end case on Shopify is like, does it compete with Amazon? The squirrely answer is yes and no. The no answer is obvious. Shopify is not a retailer. Shopify is not a brand that sells directly to consumers. It provides tools. What do those tools do? Those tools provide help for brands to sell online through any channel, but primarily your brand store. And so the universe that Shopify is setting up means that there's primacy of the brand in the world. So the brand's representation of itself, what lifestyle it represents, what consumer it represents, is number one in terms of Shopify's focus and being able to represent that. And that's in very stark contrast to the Amazon view of the world, which is Amazon is number one. You're just a vendor on the platform and you are completely replaceable. If the number one vendor on Amazon ran out of stock tomorrow, the number two vendor on Amazon would inherit almost all of its sales once those ASINs would gain some extra credibility that perhaps it was lacking. But the marketplace wouldn't miss that vendor for 1 second. Meanwhile, you could miss your Shopify store if it was a brand that you cared about. And Amazon is designed to make you a little bit replaceable. So all this to say, kind of backing up to the 50,000 foot view, you look at all these players, they're kind of deciding between advertising companies trying to be marketplaces and have marketplace-like functionality. Facebook is definitely not investing in supply chain. Google has made some investments and in partnerships in supply chain. None of them have a full e-commerce strategy that they can go behind. I think in terms of the brand-friendly message, Facebook seems to have this down with its Instagram property more than anyone else. Facebook on its marketplace side, it's more like Craigslist. It's not really for brands and for mainstream retail companies. From the Shopify point of view, there's definitely could be competition on the horizon, but the likelihood of that happening is smaller, I think, than the average, at least investment analyst thinks, because as soon as like the day that Shopify offers multi-product search through one search box is the day they break their promise with every single one of their brands on their platform. And the reason is, how are you going to decide what will show on that search results page? And then that will start to sort and rank merchants, and that will be the beginning of the end of Shopify as a neutral e-commerce platform. And so, I think in the next couple of years, Amazon probably pretty safe, but there are definitely some challenges on the horizon. And really, my full long-term view on Amazon is that Amazon is its own worst enemy in many cases, with the proliferation of fakes and trust and those things. Those are the things that if I'm Amazon, I need to focus on to avoid consumers going somewhere else for other types of products. And so I hope you really enjoyed this little chat today. And can contact me after the session, and happy to speak more about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick, for your interesting opinion on this Amazon-related topic. Now, I don't know what it's like for you in your office, but here we like to start the day with a damn good coffee. Come on, there's nothing better to wake yourself up than with a big caffeine bomb. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so maybe I'm not completely awake yet. But, you know, coffee's my safe ground. But then I guess, you know, the world isn't really 100% safe. It's paved with uncertainties. But you can prepare yourself and your business for these situations. Find out how your e-commerce business can stay agile in these circumstances in our first conference of the day.
Hi everyone, and thank you Sophie for the introduction. I'm super excited to be hosting this roundtable in front of such an international audience from across the world, and hope you're able to take away some useful insights from our expert participants. So today we're going to be talking about de-acceleration to acceleration and how to stay agile under any circumstances. Now, before we jump into the content, I'll first go around the virtual room and introduce our amazing lineup of guest speakers. So first we have Sarah Taylor, Head of Sellers for eBay in France, and Sarah drives operations and acquisitions of sellers. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Nice to be with you.
Fantastic. Glad to have you here. And we then have Andy Mulcahy, Strategy and Insight Director from IMRG. Andy is known in the industry as an e-commerce research and trend report specialist. So hi, Andy.
Hello there. Known for a lot of things, but I guess we'll leave that to the side.
And lastly, we have Tommaso Trevisan, Channel Manager from Vtex. Tommaso manages e-commerce and PIM projects with complex workflows and integrations. So hi, Tommaso.
Hi, glad to be here.
Fantastic. So thank you all for participating today, and conscious of time, and there's so much we want to cover off today. So let's dive straight into the topic of agility. Now, the world changed overnight and we're now living in uncertain times more than ever. The dynamics in e-commerce have completely changed. Businesses are adapting to this new landscape, and to stay ahead of the game, they need to be agile, alert, and able to move quickly under any circumstances. So let's first start off this discussion and talk about what happened to the e-commerce industry during COVID-19 lockdown. So we'll go around the room, and whoever jump in first and tell us about what survival tactics did you as a business implement?
If you want me, I can jump in. Well, I'd say that there was two things. First, we really had with the lockdown to prioritize our sellers' survival. On ebay.fr, we have 23,800 professional sellers that are counting on us to having their business. So we needed to ensure their proper business, even with the crisis, protecting them and helping them with the issue they had with the shipping carriers in France that could not deliver the parcels at certain times. So we launched a global measure from eBay called the Seller Protection to ensure their performance and their status on eBay was not affected with the crisis. And then we also accelerated a program that was already existing that is called Always Open on eBay, as we have lots of sellers and lots of opportunity for small and medium businesses having a physical store to launch and be online. We created a specially dedicated program to take them on board and launch their stores on eBay for free.
Fantastic.
So that's, well, the main things we had to help our sellers survive on at the beginning of the lockdown.
Fantastic. And were some of those processes that you introduced already processes that you had in place, or did you find that you had to completely introduce and implement new ways of working?
The seller protection program is an emergency program already existing globally at eBay. So we had to activate it and reinforce it. We also had to reinforce other programs like Always Open with free promotions, given the difficulties of our sellers. And we really wanted to show them our support in their activity. What was really new was the issue we had with shipping carriers that was really unexpected. And that's where we had to be more, I'd say, creative.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Thank you, Sarah. And how did you find things, Andy, from your side of things?
So what we do is we're a trade association for online retail in the UK. So the main thing that we do is we track the market. So we have lots of data. So the main thing that you noticed immediately was the way that it impacted demand so much. So in some cases it was incredibly strong, and in other cases it was very suppressed. And I think if you look at most of the categories online, yes, they boomed amazingly, particularly things like garden, home, electricals, all these type of things, because everybody, a big swathe of the population found themselves in the exact same situation. Not what normally happens, right? People are doing different things. Much here. So the problematic categories were clothing and footwear. That's where the demand dried up quite a lot. In terms of sort of how you did something good about it, I think it was the merchandising, I think, that really was quite good. So even though in clothing times were hard, it was things like and formal wear and shoes and shirts and things, dresses. People just weren't buying that because you couldn't go out. There's just no need for it. But there was demand for leisure wear and for wearing your pajamas, slippers and things. And in shoes, people needed running shoes, but they just didn't need shoes. So what you had to do is quickly work out what it was that you had to get to the front and really merchandise that stuff properly. And I saw some quite good examples of people doing that. And now I think that the big question now is how this demand actually settles down. Does it stay at this elevated position, or are we going to see some kind of return? And I think that's there are lots of parts to that question. I think a lot of it remains unanswered.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll hopefully cover a lot of that in the session today in terms of what, at the moment it's about. We're talking about what happened and how we reacted, but then of course it's what does that future look like? And Tommaso, I mean, how did you find things in terms of COVID-19 and how you as a business reacted to it all?
Perfect. So actually not so bad, obviously, because e-commerce is growing a lot this year. We as VTEX works mostly with big companies. We have 3,000 customers around the world, and we almost doubled our orders within the last 6 months. So we are kind of happy about it. We see also that there are some survival tactics that some customers put in place. Some used more creativity, some relied on agility, some more focused on different types of business. So moved from B2B to B2C, or created new marketplaces, joining forces with other e-commerces. If you want, I can speak about some examples. So we had some super quick projects that were impossible to do before COVID. For example, we created La Baja, that's the biggest pharmacy chain in Argentina, and they went live in 20 days. So it's a huge business with more than 300 shops, and they went live in such short time. So there's a different attention on the TCO of the project and on focusing on the things that have more value. So, well, I can give you other examples, but
I
Other
think
creative things.
Sorry, I was just jumping in there. Something interesting that you mentioned was the speed, right? As in, this is probably, and this is what you mentioned, Sarah, as well, which is interesting, as in some of these are processes that, or projects that you guys have already been working on in your businesses, but actually there's an acceleration here, right? Of actually, it's no longer going to be a few months, but actually, from what I'm hearing from everyone, it's about having to then all of a sudden move quickly.
Yeah, I agree. We've launched projects in a very short notice versus what was expected, and we also see with our sellers, professional sellers, some accelerations on their side to go digital or to find out new ways of working to be able to provide the products to the customers.
Yeah, definitely. And the example that you gave for the company in Argentina, did you find that all of a sudden that it just sped up the launch? Was the launch date a lot further out?
Well, actually, the compelling event was that the previous website was not working, was not stable, and was not able to keep all the traffic they had because it was a pharmacy. And so they had to move it quickly. And, the important things here are for sure the commitment of the customer on the project, resources, and mindset, because you have really to just focus like on the make it work and then make it better. So I live in Italy. I work a lot with fashion here. If you don't have all that super perfect, even like the shadow of a button, you are not going live. Now I think that this process changed a bit, and the companies are putting a bit more attention to cost, to timing, and to starting to sell into an e-commerce before obviously putting other things, because in COVID here for us it was also the year of unified commerce, of omnichannel, of all these related services, 360 KPI points of the user. So a lot of things from pick up in store, ship from store. Also, another super nice thing that came out within this pandemic was the virtual showroom that was not existing before. Now almost everyone has it. So we have a lot of innovations, quick innovations, just to help the customer.
And I guess you sort of touched on something there. It's this whole thing of, which is interesting about this perfection, is that so many businesses were always wanting to launch things, but waiting for that right moment. Whereas actually what is perfection? And even as you mentioned in these industries, and Andy, you mentioned on clothes and even footwear, there was a time where I guess in these industries, the models, the way you would have a photo shoot is no longer. So how do these companies and in the clothing industry start bringing in new products or photographing these at the level that they were doing before? I mean, did you see a change in terms of those industries, how they were merchandising products compared to pre-COVID?
Well, I mean, given the fashion example, I mean, we've got to be honest. The fashion was in a pretty bad place before we got into this. The sustainability question, the environmental footprint, and all this kind of thing. And being brutally honest, haven't really done anything. None of the fashion retailers have done anything for quite a long time, and the problem was built and built and built. And now that their customers have become a lot more aware, they're asking more questions about how these things are sourced, how things are made. I think that becomes quite a big part of it. And from what I've seen so far, it's the sort of thing that's put us on the hop a little bit. And people have tried to put out solutions that actually aren't really proper solutions. They've just kind of tried to do something quite quickly. It hasn't really worked. If we go back to before COVID burst in, now we cover online, okay, so we're not high street retail. Overall, I think retail has not had a fantastic year. I think it's been pretty bad. But online, of course, it's absolutely boomed. But before we got into this, not 2019 wasn't a particularly good year for online retail. I think there's this idea that gets put about through media that it's all just kind of going online, and that's why the high street's failing. But I don't think it's necessarily true. I think that we didn't see very strong growth through most of 2019, and the start of 2020 was quite weak. There wasn't really a great deal of growth there at all. And then this has happened, and it's just changed. Trend lines were completely blown away from where you thought they were going. But make no mistake, there was problems in fashion before we got to this. So how they rebuild, I think, is a really important question. The point about this, the sort of merchandising and the modeling and things like that. I think you sort of bring in the influencers and these people. I think they're absolutely fundamental. These people to changing the way that people approach fashion. So if you think about something like Instagram, for example, you have this hashtag, this outfit of the day. So someone will wear it, and of course they can't wear it again because that was the outfit of the day. So you have to chuck it, and you can see that that a shift that's required there is, I wore this last week, I'm wearing it again today because I reuse my clothes, and I think that fashion has to reorganise around that. So I think the changes are a lot more fundamental than we might hope.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's interesting that you touch on that it wasn't like it was perky, completely fantastic before COVID. There were already some challenges across a number of industries, and COVID, I guess, has shaken it up and made things happen that needed to happen and vice versa. So then let's talk about what is that new norm and what does the future look like? Sarah, what do you see as the new norm from an eBay side of things and in the future of sellers?
Well, what we've seen, and the example of fashion is very good, is a shift on certain categories. So on eBay, there's a lot of product categories, and we see a huge increase in home and garden products and services. We've seen an increase from 74% year over year, and even now, which means that this tends to be the new norm because people are more at home, they're working from home, and they want their home more comfortable, new design. Also, lots of gardening stuff have been sold in the period and still now, which means that people really focus on their home as they spend more time in it, which seems logical. And also everything that's related to kids and leisure at home. So home seems to be the new center of life for families and online customers.
Definitely. Is that what you found in Andy and Tommaso in your industries as well? Have you found sort of similar in terms of this whole lifestyle and home and garden categories starting to boom in addition to what other areas we've spoken of?
I totally agree with both. So we saw a bit of decrease of fashion, but it was not going well also before the pandemic. We saw also, entertainment, not just furniture or something like that, but for example, as an industry that was in crisis before COVID, since like 3-4 years, that was guitars and instruments. Grow a lot in the last 6 months, so more than 3% each month, and it was like losing more than 20% each year. So we saw also this kind of switches of changes of interests, products, and so on. So no one wants to buy a new skirt to going to work if they are not going to work at the end, no? So I think that's crucial, no?
Just the top for Zoom.
Yeah.
That's it. And in terms of then what this new norm, so we talk about product, we're talking quite a bit about product categories, but what is the new norm in terms of the dynamics actually with e-commerce? I mean, I work and specialize in the Amazon industry. So I've worked there for 15 years and seen the dynamics change. What are other people seeing across the board in terms of businesses are adapting to the way that they're selling their products online?
So, I mean, if I might bring in the sort of delivery angle here, I mean, I think this is one of the the really key things. When you look at online retail, you've got a very nice website and it all looks fantastic, the images, maybe some video and stuff. But what you're doing when you press that button is you're saying, please pick up that cardboard box and move it to my door. And that's just the reality of it. And what this has done is it's made the volumes just enormous online. But the point about people working from home more, I'm not sure that that's going to reverse necessarily. I think that there's a demographic split, because if you are, as I am, a parent, I can now take my child to school and be at my desk for 9 o'clock. That's fantastic. And we can pick him up. I don't have to get the train into work. I don't have to commute and everything. It's great doing this. And then I might go in a day a week and just have loads of meetings booked. I think that seems to me a fairly sensible sort of template. With the younger demographics, they want to go into the office because quite often they'll be house sharing, working on the end of their bed. They haven't really got much. There's not enough space for them really, so that's a bit annoying. They'd rather be around people. So I think that seems to me a profound shift. I think we're all sort of denying that that's what's happening now. I think that is happening. I don't know why anyone would want to go back to their 2-hour train commute if you're able to just work remotely. So there's that. But from a delivery perspective, what that means is it's been quite good for that, because we in the UK specifically, we have a problem where we just want stuff sent to our house. So it doesn't matter that we're at work and we're not there to receive it. We say, send that box to my house. And then, of course, the box arrives at your house. There's no one there. It gets left on the porch or whatever. And then someone comes home and gets angry that there's a box on their porch that could have been stolen. But now, of course, a lot more people are at home. It's kind of solved that problem. And it's kind of reduced that need for just massively fast, I need to know exactly when it's coming and exactly what time so that I can be sure I'm going to be there to meet it, because you're just kind of at home. So I wonder if fulfillment has been sort of massively impacted here. And particularly if you look at something like the store, I'm not sure that before this kicked off, the sort of cost argument for using ship from store was really going to work for a lot of companies. If you have a big store and you can send a lorry in to pick up a lot of products, then it makes sense cost-wise. If you've got quite a small store and you're just sending someone to pick up a few items, it's kind of bringing in cost that isn't really that useful. So I wonder if the store, because particularly in the UK, people aren't going back to the stores really in any sort of large numbers. They're just not doing it. But you've got this store estate, but it does mean that you can use that as a lot more of a sort of fulfillment area now, because you have to have social distancing in warehouses. You can't have as many people picking and packing what's an increasing volume of orders. So actually it kind of allows you to overspill into those stores. So I think that's something that's become a lot more interesting than it was before this happened.
Yeah, more so. Yeah, I guess it's them introducing more strategies as well into, okay, if this is a new norm, as you say, where actually the level of fulfilling orders and the number of online orders has increased, how are businesses coping with that influx? And I guess that goes also with eBay. I mean, as you mentioned, Andy, about deliveries just turning up on your door and then no longer being there, and then all of a sudden, I guess with eBay, a customer will then say, "Well, I didn't receive it," and then the seller's saying, "Well, I sent it." Have you found like a reduction in terms of disputes as a result of in sort of in line with what Andy's saying, and the fact that there are people at home able to receive orders and so forth?
Well, I think the situation in France has been very particular, as French people do love the pick-up drop-off solution, such as Mondial Relais, which means that they prefer picking up their parcels in store because the timing of opening is wider than post office. And post office was also preferred as at-home delivery because people are not at home, they are working. What we've seen with the crisis is that all the pickup in store has closed once suddenly for all, which created a lot of dispute and issues that we had to manage. So all the parcels have been locked down also during 2 months in those pickup points. And with the reopening, it's being very progressive. We don't think that people will pick up in store like previously. They prefer receiving their parcels at home because they're also more at home. And they slowly start to reconsider pickup in store. That was so popular in France, but I think it really changed the mentalities.
Definitely. And from an integration point of view, has anyone seen, of course, if we're seeing this influx online and some businesses may not have even have the right systems in place to manage all of this, has anyone seen any changes? And Tommaso, from an integration point of view, have you seen any changes in the dynamics there, and in particular for the future?
Okay, actually, as also Gartner stated, the importance of headless commerce is growing a lot. Headless for integrations, for microservices to connect different platforms, and for all the distributed omni-channel stuffs related to what we are saying now. So pick up in store, ship from store, and so on. Because also, okay, pick up in store is the easy one, but if you want to include the inventories from each store and show it in real time to all the customers and decide where to pick it up, how much will it cost from one or another store, and if they have a different pricing inside that store and so on, it starts to get complex. We were able to manage all these things because we are based in microservices, and we see that there's a lot of more attention on these things, because at the end we are always seeing this term like unified commerce or collaborative commerce that's growing a lot. So also within the same company, integrating the digital channel with the brick and mortars to deliver a seamless user experience and send the order where they want, when they want, from the place they want, and so on. So we see a lot of attention in this.
Yeah. Because really, the categories that we've been talking about, a lot of these categories aren't necessarily the most advanced categories when it comes to online. Especially, I know from a garden category and home, it's not like talking about some of the categories like media products, electronics that have been in the online world a lot longer. These are a lot newer categories, and I know from my vendor management days, some of these categories are behind when it comes to systems. They still have quite manual processes in place. So I imagine it had been quite a challenge for some of these categories.
I think the thing is, you got to pick your battles, haven't you? You've got to decide. Well, we want to have some fantastic AI solution that just does everything automatically and does it very cleverly. But I think that the big thing at the moment, over the last sort of 6 months or so, when you say, it's been going on for 6 months, it does rather seem crazy, doesn't it? Over 6 months, we've had a lot more new customers, I think a lot of retailers would have had than they would normally get. But that's the same for your competitors, right? So you know that you're getting a whole load of new people, fantastic. But then the question is, what do you do with them? And because you have all these new people, you don't want it to be just, I wanted to buy something off that big retailer, but they were out of stock, or the website was crashing because the traffic was so big. So I had to come to you and buy it from you. Goodbye, I'm never buying from you again. You want to somehow make those people stick with you. So I think that there's probably a need to look at the sort of system, certainly in this short-term period, where you're looking at, how do I segment these people properly? How do I get my marketing right to these people to make sure that I can convince them that they should carry on kind of buying from me, really, and it's not just a little blip. I got an upturn here, great, but then because my competitors are smarter with the way that they do that, I then lose people to them.
That you've touched on a really good point there, because at one point there were quite a few your main retailers, let's use Amazon as an example, where a lot of products were out of stock, and you found that customers were starting to go to websites and were starting to go to different channels because demand was higher than at some point the supply of products. So yeah, how do you, I guess, retain those clients long term? Not for them to then just go back and, as you say, revert to the previous products or previous channel. And I remember reading an article actually that said actually some of the customers that purchase new brands during COVID are actually likely that there is an element of brand loyalty moving forward if they capture that. And I guess how have you found that from eBay side of things in terms of retaining those new customers that have come through?
Yeah, that's definitely a key question, and we address it with a dedicated marketing for our new joiners. And yeah, we've seen a big increase. What's interesting is that in terms of demand, of course, the increase was crazy on certain products. And where we feel lucky is that we are a worldwide marketplace. So some countries could feel the need for other countries. And we've seen very interesting imports and exports of products that were more in demand in certain countries or other, depending on the lockdown. And a much longer acceptance for delivery delays also. So at the beginning, of course, there was the lockdown in Asia that impacted on tech products. But then there was a lockdown in Italy, but the UK and Germany had still a very strong offer locally. And everything worked like this with our global network from 200 countries and sellers around the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. Especially, well, we won't go on to the Brexit conversation right now, but yeah, definitely in terms of the taking advantage, I guess, of the EU. And in terms of then, of course, businesses are sitting here and they understand what happened or don't understand. It all seems a bit of a blur. But how are you advising or working with clients in terms of helping them plan for the future? Because nobody really knows what the future really is, although we speculate. How do you help businesses through such uncertainty when it comes to planning for the future? Let's start.
To me,
Anybody?
Oh, it's the same. Okay, no.
Yeah, go for
okay.
it.
Well, actually, it changed a bit the way of making an e-commerce project. So from the technical point of view, from the sales point of view, and from the expectations point of view. So on a certain level, expectations are much higher now because the market is now used to a lot of features for each brand, and obviously relying on eBay, relying on Amazon and so on. The user is used to a lot of functionalities, from returns, from replacing an object, from a lot of features that are now standard are not in a lot of platforms. In another point of view, the e-commerce managers and brands are getting way better. So we are like in the, depending on the industry, second or third wave of the e-commerce. So we are not seeing anymore a lot of brands that are building their first e-commerce. They don't know nothing about how doing the project, how legal entities works, how integration with payment providers works, and so on. So it's changing a lot, and this helps a lot on building faster projects. So a lot of people now are interested more on having an agile platform. So service as a service, SaaS, is the new standard. So, and no one wants anymore to take care about the servers or worrying that on Black Friday everything goes down and they don't know who to call and what to do. So, a lot of things changed, and this helped to, put better projects on the better e-commerce platforms on the market, because at the end everyone made giant steps also in the last year of development, just also before COVID, because of the maturity of this. And on the project side, it's easier because making it the analysis of an e-commerce is way faster, because you start from an existing one. You just define integration with shipping providers, payment providers, like channels, so marketplaces like eBay, Amazon, Azos, or other. So it gets a lot easy after to develop without having surprises.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we see this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that just does, I did say that leaves us with one question when it comes to Brexit. I did say let's not go there, but it is an important conversation. So how, before we wrap up, how are businesses or planning, or are you advising businesses to plan for Brexit come January 2021?
Well, as the Brit,
Let you go.
it's one of those questions, isn't it? This has been going on for 4 years already. It's incredibly boring, and we all just want it to just go away. In the last couple of weeks, it's come back and it's now headline news again. But anyone in business has known about this for 4 years. You know that it could be this, it could be that, and at some point we will get this kind of decision. I mean, the thing is, you should have been planning really, and you will have contingency in place. So if the supply of that becomes more expensive, then we know we need to switch to that, or whatever it is. If you haven't done that sort of contingency planning, you're running up against time a little bit now, I think. But there's always the possibility that it doesn't really happen in January. We just talk about it for another 20 years. So that's a nice thought for you.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, great. Well, from what I'm taking today, just to summarize some points, and hopefully those that are listening today have found it really insightful in terms of your experiences that you've shared today, is that really, as you mentioned, Tommaso, expectations have increased. People, more and more businesses are now shopping online. We're seeing this increase in home and garden categories, in this lifestyle, even clothing, but from a different angle as well, in terms of more people are buying lifestyle clothing as opposed to more formal wear, and business is adapting. But then, of course, you've got this fulfillment. There's more demand. More people want products sent to their houses. Andy, I love the example or the idea that you shared in terms of actually all these stores that are almost a bit more empty, less people shopping in them, actually using them more as a fulfillment method as well. So there's ways, I guess, in terms of how businesses can be innovative with what the current situation is, and the fact that businesses are learning to accelerate quicker as well, as in it's kind of the now or never approach as well, which is something that we're definitely seeing. So I just want to say thank you to everyone today for all the participants. So Tommaso, Sarah, Andy for today. And if you have any questions for those that are watching today and would like some more details and would like to speak to Sarah or Tommaso, make sure you head over to the eBay or VTEX virtual stands and book a one-to-one meeting. So thank you everyone for today and those listeners, and hope you found today's session insightful. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice evening.
Thank you, Karina, Sarah, Andy, and Tommaso for your insights. Back at my desk. I'd prefer it if I could, but I really can't stay put in front of my screen like a robot. I need a little change from now and then, don't you? I don't know what you like to do when you take a break, but I like to send out some snaps. Well, I've got to keep my friends in the loop and my followers happy. I was really surprised when I started getting shopping opportunities on Snapchat. It blew my mind. Aissatou from Snap Inc. can tell you more about this new opportunity.
Thank you, Sophie. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be part of the Lengow Day, especially with you watching from so many places in the world. My name is Aissatou Diallo, and I lead retail at Snapchat in France. Today, I'm going to share our vision of retail and e-commerce. At Snapchat, we like to talk about our users as the Snapchat generation. They are millennials and Gen Z, and through their behaviors and influence, they are changing retail and e-commerce. But first, let's talk about the current situation. The retail industry is facing new challenges. I think it's important to understand what the shopping landscape look like this year. The COVID-19 pandemic delivered a massive shock to economies, and it has changed dramatically the way people shopped. In Europe, we are forecasting almost 10% decrease in total sales this year. And this has actually accelerated the change in the way people shopped, as I said. The new shopping landscape going to rely even more on digital. E-commerce has grown more in the few last months than in the decade before that. And it's going to stay. We have surveyed American Snapchatters on their plan for shopping for Christmas. 76% of them say that they will shop online. That's almost 30% more than last year. And as the Snapchat generation is finding new ways to shop, e-commerce presence has never been more crucial, as it may take years to come back to normal. And as a direct consequence, there has been an acceleration in mobile shopping. And with that, new challenges. Your audience is fragmented. Potential clients are spread across many platforms, many devices. And if the opportunity for you on mobile is tremendous, the path to purchase is complex. It's hard to share your message and your value on a small screen. And let's put it this way, conversion rates are lower on mobile. Multitasking, busy lives makes it harder for you to engage shoppers who have a limited attention. At Snapchat, we can help you overcome this challenge. It first starts with our unique and massive audience, the Snapchat generation. This is 238 million highly engaged people that are using Snapchat every day to communicate with their loved ones. They are spending on average 30 minutes in the app to talk with their friend, to play with the camera, and to discover content. We have a very high penetration in developed markets, with the majority of Gen Z and millennials using Snap. Just to give you an idea of this massive scale, we are reaching more 13 to 24 than Facebook and Instagram combined in 5 countries that are the United States, the UK, France, Canada, and Australia. And I said before, they are highly engaged. They are creating 4 billion snaps every day on average. What makes us unique is that we open up to the camera. So instead of using text, Snapchatters are communicating visually with pictures and videos. I repeat once again, 4 billion snaps created every single day. That's actually more than the total number of pictures taken on all smartphones and all other digital cameras every day. I would like to share this little video to better demonstrate how our community uses Snapchat before, during, and after shopping, whether it's in-store or online.
I love it.
You saw it in the video, but I cannot stress this point enough. Snapchatter pay more attention to a brand if they heard about it from friends and family rather than from someone famous. This is incredibly valuable for your brand and for your company as you're looking at potentially millions of micro-influencers. At Snapchat, we understood early how we could help people communicate easily with snaps and stories. It has inspired us to design native ad format directly integrated in the app, and it makes it easier for you to deliver your message on mobile. Over the years, we have partnered with various advertisers. We have tested, we have learned from their feedback to create a strong suite of products made for every marketing objectives. The majority of our ads is full screen, which maximizes the real estate of the content that you will be able to display. So if you want to achieve your brand moment, you can do it with commercials or unskippable videos, but also you can invite potential shopper to purchase your product directly on your website or on your app just after one swipe. And I would like to pause a little bit to talk about our latest addition to our solution, the dynamic ads. Because our audience is predisposed to shop on mobile, we wanted to ensure we were designing the most optimal shopping experience on mobile as well. We have used the feedback and learning to create the best creative to showcase your product visually, automatically, and without the need for any design skills. With the combination of Snap Pixel, the ability to optimize your campaign toward purchase, and the synchronization of your product catalog, you can now drive sales at scale very easily. And we are happy to say that we are working with Lengow on your catalog. I'm also very happy to share that it works. We are already seeing great stories from our key partners. Adidas, for instance, has seen a 52% growth in return on ad spend as soon as they added dynamic ads to their campaign. We have this great quote from Rob Seydoux saying they have found a new way to reach their target Gen Z and millennial audience with relevant product creative throughout the consumer journey. Christmas is exactly Christmas is actually coming very, very soon. And I hope you will be inspired by this case. Using the full suite of our products, including dynamic ads, Swarovski outperformed the internal benchmarks. Over 200% higher return on ad spend and over 80% more efficient cost per purchase. E-commerce works on mobile with Snapchat. And it also works with home furniture and decoration with more expensive items. CB2 have been using our performance-based solutions, and they also added dynamic ads. By doing so, they have increased their return on ad spend to $69, beating internal benchmarks. And if we take the dynamic ads alone, it brought $118 return for every dollar spent on Snapchat. That's great, right? Now that we have explored our e-commerce solutions, I'd like to take you back to what makes us unique, the camera. After years of innovation, learning, and iteration, we went from the cute little dog mask to the utility camera, enabling million people interacting with their environment. At Snapchat, the camera has always been at the center of our company. From opening straight to the camera and making AR one tap away. Augmented reality is becoming critical for businesses, not only to reach their customers, but also to connect with them in new ways. 75% of our daily users interact with AR every day. It makes us the largest platform for scale AR. And Snapchat is best positioned to help you retailers tap into this powerful new format. Even if AR started mainly as a form of entertainment and expression, it has become an incredible tool for commerce. We have already seen great examples of brands leveraging AR to bring their store to customers. When Lengow launched their first clothing collection for adults, they turned to Snapchat, offering a full virtual experience. You can actually walk into the Lego universe and interact with characters, discover products, and just by tapping on the Shop Now button, purchase them. Another great example of our evolution is the Gucci experience. They offered all new way to try a new pair of shoes. I'm a big fan of sneakers myself, so I have to say this is my favorite AR experience. I could actually try the shoes from the back of my garden. And when you think about it, you're not even realizing that it's an ad. It's an experience, and this is what you can offer to your potential clients. Another great way to leverage AR is to offer a better version of your traditional advertising. This is what Wild Cohen did. They actually invited Snapchatters to scan their outdoor ads, which enables them to unlock this experience, seeing the polo shirt in AR. And you could even go directly to the website to buy a polo shirt. And lastly, with so many of us staying at home, we could discover products before they release. That's what Toyota did in France. They brought the Yaris straight in your living room, showing the great new design to our users. The Snapchat generation loves to virtually discover products, and our camera offers you a unique opportunity to capture their attention with incredible experiences. So before closing this up, I would like to recap what we have seen today. We believe Snapchat is the right platform to help you reach our generation buying on mobile, as we have a unique, massive, and highly engaged audience. You will be able to provide them with a seamless journey to your product with the best format on mobile. And you'll be able to capture their attention with immersive experiences inside the camera, and not for a few people, but at a very large scale. Thank you for listening to our vision today. I hope you had a good time discovering the Snapchat generation with me. Enjoy the rest of your Lengow day. Bye.
Thanks, Aisetu. Football is a big event in our office. Yes, we're big fans, to the point of live recording and then streaming them on social media. Live, that's a good keyword. Did you know that live commerce is becoming more and more popular? But what are the models? What does live commerce look like in China or in Europe? What are the trends of this still young field? What does live streaming look like in China? Find out more in our next conference.
Thank you, Sophie, for introducing me to this event. I'm super excited to be here and speaking in front of this audience from all four corners of the world. But more importantly, I'm super excited to welcome our guests. We're covering 3 different time zones to talk about this fascinating topic of live commerce. So first, I would like to introduce Ted Etish, who is the Chief Sales Officer for ID Shopping Direct, a leading TV shopping broadcaster reaching more than 30 million homes. Previously, Ted was Chief Sales Officer from the global marketplace Frugo.com. With Ted, we have Elijah Woolley from Paklu. Elijah is the Chief Marketing Officer of Paklu, which is the leading tech platform for influencers in China, managing more than 100,000 of influencers across 10 social media platforms. And we have Eric Feng, who is leading the e-commerce incubation at Facebook. Eric was previously general partner at Kleiner Perkins, and before that, he was CTO and head of product at Hulu. So thanks everyone for being here. I know it can be a challenge for all of you to cover those 3 different time zones, but we're very glad at Lengow to welcome you for this fascinating panel about the power of live commerce in the purchasing decision. Just to start with, I mean, we all know that a lot of innovation in e-commerce and commerce is coming from China, and we see, the West play catch up with China through, especially in social media, and live commerce is not an exception. But to start with, I would have one question maybe for you, Ted, because from an external standpoint, we may think about live stream commerce something similar to what we knew in the past about teleshopping. So is it about the history repeating itself? How would you define live commerce from your own standpoint?
Yeah, I think live commerce is a very interesting, I guess, a concept in terms of being compared to traditional teleshopping. I think you guys posed the question of maybe it would be teleshopping revisited. I think I saw that somewhere. And I think that in a way it is. So it is a bit of yes and no. But I think live shopping as a concept in general really allows viewers or users, I guess, in the terms of e-commerce, to see products being broadcasted on TV or streamed live on the internet via a hosting platform. And a lot of that we're seeing a video hosting platform, and a lot of that's being done now via social. So I think social is really taking over as a video hosting platform. So I think live commerce, live teleshopping, it's kind of one and the same, but it is different. And I think, funny enough, I think we mentioned that we're all Americans in terms of the guests on this call too. And we all grew up with TV home shopping. So we've all have seen that in the past. And we grew up in the 80s and 90s as kids watching it on TV. And I think we've seen the evolution of that, and it's dramatically changed. And I think it's becoming more of being a less corporate, less professional looking experience. While it still does exist naturally with QVC, Home Shopping Network, and us, for example, in the UK. I mean, it's definitely become more gritty, more on the street, and definitely with influencers taking charge and really pushing forward with driving live commerce shopping online.
Yeah, makes sense. Elijah, I mean, you're American, but you're based in Shanghai. I don't know if teleshopping used to be popular in China, but obviously you must see something radically different from what we see in Europe and in the US. What's your view on it?
Correct. Yeah, I'm not familiar with if there was live shopping in China in the past, but for sure, social has been a massive disruptor of many industries, and now the latest one is this online shopping space or the live shopping experience. And I agree that it is grittier in some ways, but at the same time, the evolution of really what's happening in China around live shopping is it's becoming kind of a real entertainment experience. And one of the reasons why it's actually gripped the Chinese audience is because they don't have, Netflix and ESPN and 250, cable channels or whatever. The restrictions around entertainment and the production of entertainment has kind of forced people into looking for something that is more uniquely and nichely interesting to them. And this idea of commerce being a form of entertainment is something that's not super new to China. We've seen it in the KOL space for time now. And now we're just seeing it in this kind of live environment. And because Chinese are very social people and communal people, they love this idea of that lots of people are watching at the same time and interacting and asking questions, and it's very engaging. It's gamified in some areas, and so it's played really well to the Chinese context. And I just had a conversation earlier today because of some of the minute details of culture and what's happening here. I'm not exactly sure that it's even going to happen the same way in the West.
And Eric, what do you think? Because obviously in the US, there's a lot of entertainment available. So how do you see things from a US citizen standpoint? Do you agree with Elijah on this point?
I do agree with Elijah in that live shopping in the rest of the world will look very different than how it's been manifested in China and the great success that we've seen in the Asian regions. But I do think globally, there are three value props of live shopping that will translate. Live shopping does provide for, I think, three really key important things for the consumer. The first being discovery. A lot of people have mentioned influencers, KOLs, knowledge or subject area experts. That trend of discovery through people, I think, is universal. It is global, and that will be applicable outside of China. The second, I think, is just around explanation. I'm a huge believer that video is one of the best ways to get information, hence why we're on this panel today and why I hope everyone is enjoying the thoughts here, because sight, sound, and motion combined are just a high output way to deliver information. And that applies to shopping as well. So I think explanation of products is an important factor that's going to translate globally. And then the third is authenticity. It's just harder to fake a product, fake an experience over video. It's much easier to do it on text. It's easy to do it on image and photos. But with video, there is a higher bar and a greater sense of authenticity. So those three factors of discovery, explanation, authenticity, I do think will translate outside of China.
I think ultimately what you're saying, Eric, too, is that it basically drives trust. So when people are like you said, they're being authentic and they're explaining products, I mean, you're going to trust a live shopping experience a lot more than, let's say, watching it on your television, because you see someone doing it. If the product doesn't work specifically in a certain way that was planned, they kind of usually they bring in humor and they bring in like a comic feel to kind of wash things over and again build trust. So you would trust an influencer more via live shopping than you would, say, via television experience.
Totally agree. I remember going to visit QVC many years ago, and the first thing that struck me was walking in on their front door. They had their slogan, these giant letters, and it was "Find what you love what you find." And often people think of QVC or home shopping as a maybe antiquated way to do commerce, but I think that mission is more valuable and relevant than ever before in a world where we have not just thousands, not just millions, but literally billions of products at our fingertips at any moment in time because of e-commerce. The idea that there's a service to help me not only curate products, that's the finding, but then that stands behind trust and authenticity and quality of that product, hence the love what you find. That type of value prop is more relevant than ever.
Do you think it's generational in a way? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say one of the really
say.
interesting things about what we see in China is it kind of feels like these hosts in some ways are taking you through a mall, if you can think of it that way. Like, this is your own friend that you've built a relationship with over time, that you have these levels of trust that we've talked about, and authenticity, and they're curating these products for you, and they're taking you through and saying, hey, I'm going to talk about this product for 5 minutes, and once that's over, we're going to talk about another product. And so it is this kind of like, it's the new mall in some ways. If you can kind of imagine, you're going to a new shop each time, except the shop clerk is the same person. It's your friend who's exposing you to stuff. And they have a special advantage over here on that, with these very, very top live streamers, that no matter what they're showing you, it's the best deal you're going to be able to get anywhere on the internet. And typically, even how the contracts are signed, it's the best deal you're going to get on this product for the next 3 to 6 months. And so there's this really, really high value proposition from trust and quality of products, and then even the price point of products.
Makes sense. Just talking about, the authenticity topic is really interesting. And Elijah, you know a lot about key opinion leaders. And I have these questions because from my own standpoint, it seems that we moved from, internet superstores, presenting products, to family and friends kind of selling products. So how do you see this trend? Is it about, having a massive audience to be very successful on live stream commerce? Or is it more now about having this very close audience that trusts you and know that what you're saying is authentic? Because to me, we're seeing two different trends, and I'm just wondering, how do you see things on the Chinese market, especially?
So I'll start with a little statistic here, or some data I just saw the other last month. I saw the sales figures from Austin Lee, who's one of our top live streamers in the country. In May, he worked with 600 brands, and he sold 21 million units and at almost 3 billion renminbi. This is one guy in one live stream. And essentially 90% of the sales are coming from 1% of the live streamers. And because the traffic is all being channeled to the top. And that's really why when you really understand KOL marketing in China, it's not that much different than sports and acting and singers. 1% are making a killing, 2 to 4% are maybe making a living, and all the rest are starving artists. And it's really no different in live streaming.
Interesting. Ted, I don't know how far you've been in the UK market so far, but do you see something similar? Is it much closer to what we used to see and see on TV? How do you envision this?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit different, I would say, than like a Chinese experience, for example. In the UK, we're very much divided by generations. Essentially, the older generation, they still enjoy like the traditional TV home shopping, and our core demographic for TV broadcast is an older lady shopping from home with a high disposable income. But the market that we're trying to go after and the core demographic who we're trying to get are the ones who are shopping by influencers and being inspired by influencers as well. And we've actually dedicated one of our TV broadcast studios. We've turned it actually into a digital studio, and we're working to push forward and trying to attract that new demographic. We've actually named them. So like we have in the UK. Jess is our younger demographic who we're going after, and Shirley is our traditional standard TV home shopper. So those are traditional names in the UK. If you're not familiar with hearing those,
I actually have a question about that too, because from my my age range or my youth, I used to think of TV home shopping. There was a slight bit of stigma with it that wasn't completely positive, maybe sometimes around products or how things were sold, or kind of, some something about, and typically it was this really late night programming and stuff. And now you're saying, hey, there's these young demographic of viewers and consumers. How is that changing as far as like the broadcast version of shopping?
Yeah, so it still does have that stigma, and I would say, and a lot of those shoppers that we do see, like the late night shoppers, is surprising population figure in the UK who are up at that time. It's usually shift workers or let's say people coming home from the pub, for example, or the bar at let's say 11 p.m. and we come on ITV, which was one of the largest private channels in the UK. And we're going after a certain core demographic at that time too. So we actually switch and go after men at that time. So you usually see like hardware tools and product that is focused more for, let's say, men. Also gifts for women. So men looking to buy gifts for women when they let's say get off work or are, let's say, watching late night TV. We try to target that different demographic. But you are right in what you said, in that there is a certain stigma with TV shopping, and it's older, a bit more, let's say, not let's say hacky, but it is a bit more corporate focused, and it doesn't have that same feel as like an influencer would.
I would also add that live shopping in the US has seen the traditional television base, like the QVC HSNs in the US, has seen a bit of a renaissance, especially during COVID times. HSN and QVC have reported big spikes in viewership. E-com sales have been up about 40% for those platforms as well. So I think that there is a rewriting of the landscape due to COVID times. And even pre-COVID, there is a bit of, to your point, Elijah, nostalgia, almost like retro nostalgia towards it, because a lot of folks have remembered it from their youth, or might have seen their parents have done it. So some of the younger generations, it's almost like a nostalgic feeling to sample it. So there's a little bit of that momentum as well. But on the online side, I would say that is really where you're starting to engage with younger demographics, millennial shoppers. One of the best categories of live shopping success in the US has been streetwear. So a great use case for live shopping is limited quantity products, like a drop, where you only have a limited number of SKUs. You want to have maximum demand for that event, and it fits really well with streetwear and sneakers and the shopping modality of drops. So we've seen a lot of success, and that skews much younger towards the millennial audience.
What's the reason why? I have a question for you. What's the reason why the tech platforms, e-commerce and social, in the US or globally outside of China have been so slow to adopt, direct from content to commerce and live streaming? It feels like, Amazon could just throw in some sort of live streaming feature, like that if they really wanted to, and Facebook could really throw in, an e-commerce and direct payment kind of feature right away if they really wanted to. What's the holdup in the rest of the world? I'm a little bit lost on that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And outside of China, you're absolutely right in that you haven't seen that explosive growth from the major tech platforms. I think it comes down to a couple of things. The first is a lot of companies just have very dominant single business models, or maybe not single, but certainly one that is the key focus of the company. So, I'll just take a company like Google, where it is so advertising focused that commerce is kind of like this strange thing. It has different margin structures, different ways to do reporting on the financials and the revenue, and it's hard to rationalize two different business models. And I think that that's just one of the challenges. Another one is that consumers often just are in very different mindsets when they go to those services. Like, I would say Amazon, one of the greatest companies and certainly the e-commerce pioneer in this country, the shopper there is very much showing up at Amazon with intent already in mind. I say that very few people, if they have 10 minutes to kill, will just pop it up at Amazon and kind of see what happens to be available to buy. That is not their model. It is intent. It is about limiting the number of steps, reducing the time spent between when you show up to when the product not only gets purchased, but even shows up at your door. And with things like Alexa, now you don't even have to visit. You just like yell at a device from across your room that you want toilet paper, and it just shows up a day later. So for them, they're just so good about that intentful shopping experience. And live shopping does kind of break out of that mode where it is more of a lean back experience where you're being entertained, you're going through the discovery journey, and that's just not what their master skill is. Amazon has tried a couple of times at live shopping, and some of the other platforms have dabbled, but I do think that there's some sort of institutional friction preventing companies from being great at it like they are in China.
I would say to Elijah's point too, and to your point too, Eric, is that there's a lot of moving parts in the background to that too. So like Amazon, for example, has Prime that it could tap into and its warehousing and infrastructure, where like a lot of the social sites, they have to get integrated. I mean, we're on a call with an ERP system right now. We have to get integrated with people like Lengow, for example, and basically have like an end-to-end order management system and everything, basically all the points firing perfectly to make that happen. So it is a bit of a challenge there to then, let's say, get integrated with Shopify on top of that, Magento, and then go to market with that and make sure that it works. So there's a lot, like I said, lots of moving parts in the background.
And Elijah, given
I guess that's the China way of doing stuff, man. They just hammer stuff through. Just like, if there's problems, we just throw human bodies at it. It's just if there's a problem, it's just man hours that it's gonna get done. And we're working everybody's working this Jojo Leo, this 9 a.m. to 9 p.m, 6 days a week, and essentially it's 2 years and 1 year over here.
Yeah, and given how far advanced China is in the live shopping journey, the whole market and ecosystem, I'm curious to get your perspective on: are we at peak live shopping in China? Is there more plateaus to rise beyond that, or is it leveling off? Is it dropping off? What do you think?
Yeah, so there was a pretty significant drop off last month. I heard somewhere in the range of about 30%. And I think the reality is we haven't seen this thing really wash out. I mean, the reason why it just went, rampant here was because of COVID. Everybody was stuck inside, and they needed some form of entertainment, and they were ready to consume. Chinese have become great consumers. And then you had a situation here where the live streaming in China is driven by discounts. And that's really, really important to understand. And so we had, companies like Nike and L'Oreal who were literally doing product dumping on China. So they were bringing products that weren't going to sell in other markets and just selling them at massive discounts in live streams in China to move that product into the country. And so, and out of stock. So we haven't really seen how this thing is going to really pan out. And one of my common ways of explaining this is that we know the platforms love live streaming because it creates a very sticky environment and generates sales and commissions for them. For the users, the customers, they're getting amazing products at tremendous discounts while being entertained. And the hosts, the KOLs, they're getting fucking rich, man. But the real question here is around brands. And we know that, there's a lot of scams that are going on for brands. There's a lot of questions around discounting, and there's been huge mistakes around discounting hero products and product descriptions and how that, the value proposition is communicated. And then we know because of the heavy discounting and how the economics of it really work out, that if you're not retaining about 30% of the customers that buy for repurchase at fuller prices or other products, you're losing money. And during COVID, that's fine, but we really don't know how this is going to wash out in the end if brands start to pull back on giving really, really great deals. Because they're the great driver of this. And if you really understand some of the economics of China, that we have 600 million people that still make less than 1,000 renminbi or less than $150 a month, there's an opportunity cost situation that's taking place here where the average price product is $10, and people are watching these live streams because they really want massive discounts, and it's actually a very good use of their time when you consider the how much their income is. And so this is one of the reasons why I have questions around, is the China model, what is it going to look like when it does really start to penetrate the West, because it is so unique to the Chinese market.
So you're worried that it may not be sustainable. It almost sounds a little bit like the flash sale craze of the early 2010s. Is that kind of what you're sensing over there?
Yeah, and not to say that it will. I think it's just got to go through some some growing pains, and I don't know what that's going to look like in the end. But for sure, we've seen this thing shoot up, and we don't know what's next. And one of the reasons why we don't know what's next is because commerce right now is so dynamic in China. Our version of TikTok, called Douyin, is becoming an e-commerce platform. And that's what they originally planned on it to be. I have a bunch of buddies that started working there several years ago, and they said this is going to be a video storefront for businesses and for commerce, and it's quickly becoming that. And many of our short video platforms are becoming live streaming and commerce platforms. And so with inside of this dynamic environment, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like even in 6 months or a year or 18 months.
One question about exactly about brands, because we talk a lot about platforms, about key opinion leaders, but talking about brands, we talk about discounts, and I agree with Eric, it really reminds me about flash sales. Do you have any tips that you could share for brands and retailers that want to get started, actually? What channels they should start with? Is it all about discounts? Is there any other strategies to really be successful when it comes to live stream?
Ted, I'd love to hear what
in China.
you have to say here.
Well, let's say in Europe, because we talk a lot with European brands at the moment. So maybe Ted, you can share your view on it.
Yeah, I would say, we've actually looked at going with a few different agencies as well too, and we've decided to go with professionals on this. So not necessarily just diving into it head first. Because you hear horror stories about companies spending tons of money and end up not really going anywhere, and then you hear about the I believe Elijah mentioned too, with only 1% of the influencers actually drive revenue. So how do you if you're like a small to medium enterprise and you're approaching this for the first time, you want to go with a proven method. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with partners that can actually drive ROI. And I think the best way to do with that is to go, I would say, as a first step in Europe, to go with the professionals and go with someone who you know has like a portfolio of clients who are successful in this space, and to not dive in head first. Because you can't approach it the same way you would a PPC campaign or an affiliate campaign. It's a completely different beast, and you want to make sure that you're going forward with the right foot, essentially.
Makes sense. And what about regularity? Because we were talking about that sometimes you lose money on doing a flash sales or doing live stream. What would you recommend to brands? Is it all about making having a strong impact on the few time in the year? What about regularity? Do you see, for example, Elijah, some brands which are doing from a regular standpoint flash sales or live stream in China, or is it once or 2 times a year?
Yeah. Well, right now, I think we don't really know what the regularity is going to be, because it is kind of so new. It really, the infrastructure for it really was only built out in 2018. In 2019 had some good adoption, but this year's really been the bumper year. And so that being said, I think I just saw a statistic today that about 30% marketing budgets, e-commerce marketing budgets are being directed towards live streaming at the moment, but it's just too hard to say how it's going to look in the future.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and we're really bullish on the idea of smaller brands that can then use live shopping to now have a direct relationship with customers. And that's a really powerful sea change in the retail industry, whereas often in previous years, brands had to go through third parties, whether it was a retailer or a wholesaler or some other form of distributor. Whereas now they can not only sell direct and ship direct via e-commerce, but now they can connect direct with their customers through platforms like live shopping. So I think that the brands that really embrace live shopping may look very different than the brands that are very successful today in a traditional model.
Yeah, and that's a good point actually, because from what we see in Europe at the moment, experiments they are being done both by brands and retailers. So we see brands, going direct and leveraging platforms to get in touch with their audience. But we also see some retailers trying to accelerate on this side. Is it something that you see in your respective markets? A mix of, a majority of brands, but also some experience from retailers, or do you think it would be all about brands at the end of the day? Ted, maybe.
So I can.
Yeah, go for it, Elijah.
Well, I was just going to say that one of the really interesting case studies that's happened in China here in the travel industry for the OTCs is Ctrip, which is a travel booking platform. And during this COVID thing, their CEO has been hosting weekly live streams and selling travel packages and hotels, and it's been wildly successul for them, and kind of been able to in some ways it's felt like it's kept them afloat. So this idea of brands building up their own channels and IP, and even getting CEOs of these that's a top company in the country. It's really unique in that perspective, I think, especially maybe compared to the rest of the world.
I think in Europe, for example, it probably will always remain a bit of a mixed package between traditional retailers selling brands. A lot of brands probably will still use the distribution chain, the traditional distribution chain to go to market. We'll see a bit more cooperation where the brands are actually working with the retailers and doing a bit of direction, I would say too, to say, hey, if retailer A is integrated with let's say a certain platform, we'll give them a certain amount of creativity to do something with our brand, and you'll probably see a lot of collaboration there, I would imagine.
Eric?
I think it's I think that's a great point where the lines are definitely blurring. As brands can go direct, they act as the retailers. Retailers are also starting to acquire or launch their own brands and own that customer journey as well. And then you have the third party, which is the personality or the influencer or the key opinion leader themselves as a really important part of this equation. So I do think that the lines will blur, and live streaming will be yet another accelerant to these lines getting really muddled between who are the actual players in this space.
I think to complete the circle too, we talked about earlier on this about basically teleshopping having a certain stigma. So I think, do you think in the future there could be a stigma related to, let's say, influencers and brands who use influencers, and there'll be brands who don't use influencers? I think that could evolve from what we've seen in teleshopping, for example.
I think there's a little bit, I know there's a slight amount of maybe stigma that's arisen with our Jiulingho, kind of our post-90s or post-95 consumers in China, where there's a slight level of distrust that seems to be kind of building around the whole KOL influencer ecosystem, just because they know that they're for sale, and that's that dings their authenticity.
Yeah, I think at one point everyone will be inundated and I guess desensitized to it. And I think as a kid growing up in the US, I'm desensitized to a lot of ads, and immediately, okay, this is a commercial, I'm being sold. I think you guys probably have the same gut feeling.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's true, and that consumers will continue to get savvy to various marketing messages and sort of try to read what are the motivations behind the message bearer. But it's like a tale as old as time, in that celebrities and famous people and people you look up to and admire, they capture your attention. This is not a new phenomenon. It's just that who that person is changing. Before you had to be on TV, or you had to be performing in some big arena to count as somebody famous that I would want to spend time with and listen to. And now that definition has changed a lot. You may just show up on a little tiny screen, which is my phone, from your basement, and all of a sudden you're like the most important person in my life now. So I think that how you become influential and famous is changing, but the idea that influence and fame won't be important, I think that's probably too far of a stretch.
Agreed.
And what about the social component of live stream? Because obviously we're talking about myself looking at watching a screen with an influencer talking about the product, but how do you see things? Do you see also some trends about people watching? When you watch TV, most of the time you watch TV with your family. Is it the same on the live stream environment? Do you see people watching live stream with friends and family, or is it something much more personal?
Well, it's pretty hard to gather the family around your phone.
Yeah, let's say, yeah. But you may be connected. I'm sure that you have a WeChat.
I don't know how it is in Europe. Or Ted, you might know.
I mean, here you see kids. You do see kids huddled around watching one mobile device, for example. So I think when you're younger, it is more communal, and it is more. It is a little bit of word of mouth. But as you get older, I mean, when was the last time you huddled around your friends looking at your cell phone? Like, it probably doesn't happen as much. But you do see it, like on the street. You do see kids huddled together watching stuff together.
Well, and that's actually an interesting part of the Chinese version of live streaming, is this fact that there's a feedback loop there, that you can text the host, and that even sometimes the audience is kind of having a conversation with each other, and that plays really well into the communalist culture of China. But that's also, I think, one of the reasons why it's played so well, and one of the features that's been great about it in China is that you do have this kind of sense that you're not alone watching this program, that you're actually with other people. And I think maybe that's where we get some of that aspect of family gathering together.
Yeah, I'll double tap on that point. Completely agree in that social and communal. It doesn't have to be the people under your roof. It doesn't have to be like your nuclear family that you're getting camaraderie and kind of that social connection with. It could be somebody across the world. And that's definitely behavior we see, where you have your, I've got the people I eat dinner with, which is my household, but then I have the people that I shop with, which could be, strangers from around the country. The beauty of live streaming is that it can bring those people together, even though they're not in the same physical proximity.
Great. I see time is running, so I think the conversation is about to end. Is there anything you would like to add? Do you think that live stream is the future of e-commerce? I mean, obviously you think that it will play an important role in the future, but is there anything that you would like to add before we stop and move to the next conference? Eric,
I think there'll be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh. No,
Ted, jump in.
No. Yeah, no. I was just gonna say, I think it's not gonna end, and I don't think it'll end with, let's say, the social platforms that we see now, or the new emerging ones that we see now. I think it's only going to get bigger, and I think there'll be new players, especially in the West, as this thing grows and evolves. And I think the best is probably yet to come.
Yeah, I'll just add that when I see the amount of work that both the seller and the buyer are willing to do to have a transaction, and they keep doing it over and over again, whether it's, hey, hold up a placard with a unique code that I've written down, and then you have to go to a separate app or a separate messaging platform and text me that number, and then you have to go to this other form and fill out these fields and give me your credit card information, and then hope through all this that the product will still arrive at your door. And people are still doing it today, or they might burn into the video feed their bank account number for you to transfer funds in order to get the product. When I see just all of this friction inside the buyers and sellers, and despite that friction, the market continues to grow and transactions still continue to happen, it makes me incredibly bullish that there's a long future ahead here, because it is up to us as the people working on the platforms, working on the experiences, to remove those friction points and make this experience a lot better. So the demand is certainly there, and I think that we're still in the very early days of getting the experience right. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, and I think if China's any indicator, this thing is just going to be. I always say about KOLs and social commerce and stuff, it's only going to get more, and we don't exactly know what more looks like, but we've democratized. We're democratizing everything from entertainment to commerce, and we're not going back. And so it is pretty fucking. I haven't heard that there's that much friction in some of this commerce that takes place in the West, but there's hope for better days.
China, you are the light that will show us the way.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I do share your optimism. I think that it's still the very early days. Obviously, that's a moving environment. We see even in China that could be one of the most major markets in this field. There's lots going on at the moment. But yeah, it's truly fascinating. So thank you so much, guys, for your time. Thank you so much for your expertise and feedback. I'm sure the audience will enjoy this time with you, and we'll share your LinkedIn profile so that they can follow up with you if any questions. But we really appreciate having you on this panel, because it was really interesting. So thank you so much. Sophie, now it's time to move to the next conference.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Frederick, Eric, Ted, and Elijah for this inspiring talk. It will be fascinating to see how live commerce will develop in these coming years. At some point mid-morning, I start to lose a bit of inspiration. In fact, it's my stomach that starts to set the tone. So I browse online looking for a source of inspiration or motivation, but I can't find anything. So at some point, take out my smartphone and I'm just stroll through Pinterest. Suddenly, I'm completely awake again, and my stomach is just as inspired by the pictures as I am. By the way, Pinterest is becoming a big player in e-commerce. Retailers, watch out for this next inspiring keynote. Today, Pinterest can bring undecided buyers to a new shopping experience dominated by inspiration. Let's listen.
Well, thank you, Sophie, for handing over, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Pinterest webinar, Undecided to Buyers, How Inspired Shopping Drives Action. I am Adrien Boyer. I'm the Regional General Manager for Pinterest for France, Southern Europe, and Benelux. I hope you had a really relaxing summer break. I'm thrilled to be here and take part to this 2020 edition of the Lengow Day here in Paris. Things are certainly very different than the event last year, but I'm really delighted to see what an inspiring program of content has been scheduled nonetheless. And I know that our Pinterest team is really excited to meet with as many of you as possible during the workshop and the virtual meetings. Today, I'm lucky to be joined by Mathieu Spic, who's the head of digital media tools and measurement for Carrefour in France. Mathieu has kindly accepted to come and discuss with me the changing and retail environment and the role that Pinterest plays in Carrefour's marketing strategy. But before we actually start our chat, I would like to take a few minutes to share with you what makes Pinterest so unique and why Pinterest is a tremendous opportunity for brands and retailers, as much from an inspiration standpoint as much as from a shopping standpoint. So at Pinterest, our mission is to bring everyone the inspiration to create the life they love. Every day, millions of users come to Pinterest to seek ideas and inspirations on what to buy, what to wear, what to do. And our mission as a company is when you come to Pinterest with such a project, is to provide you with the most personalized, the most relevant, the most useful inspiration so you can get offline and realize that idea in the real world. And so this year, more than ever, people are in search for inspirations. We've actually experienced on the platform peaks of traffic and engagement. So we passed the milestone of 400 million monthly active users who have saved in total more than 240 billion pins, which are as many ideas or inspirations that are organized in more than 5 billion boards, which are as many projects from users. And that's actually a tremendous audience that's growing very fast, more than 39% year over year, and organically, words of mouth being the first growth lever for Pinterest. And that audience represents a tremendous opportunity for you as a brand or retailer to inspire. And so what are they coming to the platform for? They come for very different needs and projects. They come for everyday projects, looking for ideas of recipes, for what to cook tonight. They also come for seasonal moments, to prepare back to school or to prepare Christmas, make it a bit special this year. We know that Christmas will be very different. But they also come for life projects. So changing apartments, getting married, or expecting a kid. And so for me, I use Pinterest for different purposes. I love photography. So I use it for always-on inspiration on what interesting photos could I take about Paris or other places. I use it also for health and well-being tips. I'm also using it to prepare a trip to Japan that I would like to do with my wife. And finally, what was most interesting for me recently is that I used it actually for cooking recipes. I'm a really bad cook. I rarely cook, but obviously in lockdown time period, I had to get onto that new hobby. And so I was searching and discovering on Pinterest recipes, especially easy recipes. And that's how I came across Thermomix, which is an amazing tool that I discovered and I actually bought via Pinterest. And I must say that this has completely changed the face of my quarantine in my apartment in Paris. And so people come to Pinterest undecided. When you go to Pinterest, you come with a very open query. You're looking for inspirations of how to decorate your living room with, of Nordic inspiration, or how to wear, a jacket with sneakers, for instance. But most users actually are not mentioning brands in their queries. The 97% of searches are unbranded. And so while those users are coming with an intent, they haven't found the brand that is actually going to meet their need. And so while they search on Pinterest, they discover brands. We have 77% of weekly users that have discovered new brand or product on Pinterest. And so brands are absolutely needed for the discovery experience because brand content, which is organic or paid, is actually a solution to a user need. Pinterest is not a user-generated content platform because more than 75% of the content on the platform comes from brands. So brands are solutions to user needs. And so what about our audience? We have in France more than 17 million monthly unique viewers. And historically, we've had actually a lot of, female, a big part of our core audience, 35 plus, and quite affluent. So we actually have 1 in 3 French mothers on the platform. But what we've seen actually recently is that the growth on the platform has come also from new segments. So we've seen a very strong growth among millennials, which have grown more than 50% year over year. We've also seen growth coming from males and from Gen Z. So a very diverse audience that are interested in the same categories but express their needs and their individuality very differently. And what's interesting and distinctive about user mindset on Pinterest is that they come to plan projects, future projects. And they actually come to plan much earlier than non-users on Pinterest. And so if you look at, for instance, the searches related to Christmas, you can see on the left side here a comparison between searches on a traditional search engine, which is the bottom line, and then you have searches on Pinterest, which is the red line. And while you can see that the spikes of searches related to Christmas on the traditional search engine really come at the end in December, they actually start mid-year on Pinterest. You can see this spike here in June. And in 2020, more than ever before, actually people feel the need to plan their project even earlier. So we can see that the searches related to Christmas on Pinterest have grown actually 59% versus in April 2020 versus April last year. And I think this is directly linked to the fact that we were mostly in lockdown and we had a need to project ourselves in the future and dream. It's interesting because we had billions of searches on the platform about what people are interested in, what they want to buy, and what they want to do. And this really makes Pinterest a laboratory of predictive insights and trends. And so we can unpack actually all the insights around Christmas preparation to go to a much more granular level of analysis. And you can see here the timing of searches and the volume of searches according to different categories, such as gifting, Christmas food and drinks, decor, hosting parties, and festive travel. And so depending on which category you operate in, it's interesting to have those insights as to at which point in time does a search related to your category start on Pinterest, so that you can actually adapt your content and be present as a brand with your product and services when people are most open to it. And so while we've invested historically a lot in the upstream phase to offer a unique discovery and experience to users, more recently, we've actually invested downstream on the funnel to help make an easier transition from inspiration to action, and especially on shopping, because 84% of our users actually come to Pinterest in advance of a shopping act. And so here are a couple of examples of functionalities and innovation that we've launched. So we've launched Catalog, which allows a brand or a retailer to bulk upload all their product catalog, which will create automatically dynamic product pins, which will have dynamic pricing, availability in stock, and will also show with the marker a ticker, the merchant that actually sells that product. We've introduced shopping ads, which help translate the intent signals that users have on the platform in targeting capabilities on media, so that you as a brand can actually send the right product to the right user at the right time on the right project. We've also launched collections, which allow you to display your collection of product with pricing, and dynamic retargeting, which allow you as a brand to retarget someone who would have come to your website but has not completed a purchase and can be retargeted on Pinterest. And so with this suite of innovations, our belief is that Pinterest is really a visual search engine that allows brands to not only inspire users at the beginning of the journey, but allows them to take them from inspiration to action in just a few click and drive performance. I am now pleased to ask actually Mathieu to join me for a conversation about Carrefour France. Hi, Mathieu.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm really fine. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. So let's get right into it. I was curious to hear your perspective on how has the shopping experience changed in the last few months. What kind of shifts have you seen in consumer behaviors that you think are, really significant and sustainable?
Yeah, it's interesting because during the COVID crisis, we had a lot of shifts to do. And talking about the online shopping, we saw a huge increase in the number of online shoppers. The first week of the lockdown in France, our volume of new customers went 4 times higher than the previous year. So as we had a lot of users online, we had to adapt the website, for example, with an online queue. And we added new e-commerce services to make sure all the customers could be delivered on time. For example, we developed a separate web page to sell online essential product boxes. It was an everyday product that could be delivered quickly than the classic order at Carrefour. So after the first weeks of lockdown, we had a big volume of new customers. So we also had to shift the strategy from doing new customers before the COVID crisis to now make them loyal, because we had a lot of new ones during the lockdown. So we knew that the lockdown was a specific time and that the customers' habits really changed during this time. So first, we created audiences of visitors of the website and of new customers during the lockdown, because we knew that after a while they might stop ordering online because they would go back to stores. So after some weeks, we added a new strategy dedicated to keep customers loyal to the e-commerce services, because it's important for us at Carrefour to allow people to use in-store and online services at the same time. And so now we really focus our strategy in reducing churn, and this is a completely new approach that we didn't have before the lockdown, for example.
Very interesting to see that new focus on reducing churn, indeed, and the explosion of e-commerce you've seen and you had to adapt to. Can you tell us more about your data strategy, and in particular, how do you take trends or insights into account as you consider your marketing mix?
Actually, trends are really important for us. The COVID crisis was a really good example. In the beginning of the crisis, we learned that people were feeling nervous about the risk of going back into stores. So to answer these questions, we worked on a new strategy for the first 2 months of the lockdown. In the beginning, we stopped all the campaign and we worked on a totally new branding strategy from scratch at this time. So we shifted our campaign messaging from driving checkouts to instead reassure customers on all the procedures that we have put in place to make stores safe. For example, we changed all the advertising campaigns. We had new videos explaining the sanitation measures in store. We also made videos about contactless and mobile payments that was available in our store. We even developed some contents dedicated to kids, for example, during the lockdown with coloring pictures, for example. So all the digital strategy changed to a more branding strategy. And during this reassurance phase, we did over 20 million impressions on Pinterest, and we reached about 4 million customers in this short period of time. And talking about trends, I have another example, which is not about the lockdown, but Pinterest really helps us to know what messaging we should advertise. For example, we know that a lot of people are trying to find inspiration on Pinterest, as you said before. And there is one good example with the meal planning for Christmas. A lot of people are planning their meal for Christmas in October. And we use Pinterest to try to fit to the trending topics and adapt the digital campaign thanks to all the insights we can find on Pinterest.
Yeah, that's right. Super interesting to see the meal planning inspiration opportunity that you saw. But indeed, we have billions of searches on what people are actually planning to do. And so we have an audience insights tool that helps you at any given time analyze what are the most popular searches on the platform, which can inform indeed a creative strategy or even a product strategy for some for some brands or retailers. So you've been with Carrefour a key partner to Pinterest for almost a year now. And we're actually thrilled that you were the first retailer to adopt the shopping ads for grocery, in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about your perspective of this partnership, where Pinterest fit within the marketing strategy, and maybe tell us about the effectiveness actually of our partnership?
Yeah. What really interested us with Pinterest is that it's a social network and a search engine. So we can touch customers during the inspiration phase or during the action phase. It's really important for us because we can work all the marketing funnel with Pinterest, and our strategy is totally full funnel. So we can easily do branding campaigns with video, for example. We can do contextual ads in feed to drive traffic on our website, for example. And we can do, as you said before, conversions campaigns with catalog and shopping ads. And that's really important to have everything in the same platform to work on this full funnel approach. Another really important thing for us, which is available on Pinterest, is the creative automation. As you said before, it's really important for us to be able to dynamize all our creatives. As we have a lot of stores, a lot of services, and a lot of products, we have to automate all the lower funnel creatives. So thanks to shopping ads with Pinterest, we are able to do that. So we launched a first test just before the lockdown with some catalog campaigns, and the first results were really interesting. We had a return on ad spend of 2.7 on the campaign, and so we had to stop this campaign just with the crisis, as I said before, because we shifted the strategy. But it will be really interesting for us to try to automate this campaign and do always-on campaigns on all the promotion and the products of Carrefour.
That's great that you're seeing some success during shopping ads. What other elements do you foresee in the next step for our collaboration? What else is important to you?
One of the most important things for my team, for example, is to be able to optimize the campaigns and to measure the incremental lift of the campaigns. It's been a while that we work on two different KPIs, the incremental on online sales, but also on offline sales. So we have been working on different protocols. We work with LiveRamp, for example, to allow us to show incremental lift of digital campaigns to store sales. And it's really our main focus in measurement strategy. Our goal is now to measure all the digital channels, including Pinterest. And I think it would be really interesting for us to know the exact impact that Pinterest can have on the online and offline sales. Moreover, Pinterest allows us to add third-party tracking directly in the creatives. So it's really useful for us to better understand the customer path and to be able to measure all our digital channels the same way.
Absolutely. And so we're also partnering with LiveRamp to measure the impact of the Pinterest campaigns on offline sales. So we've run, for instance, a campaign for Bledina, the baby food brand, that showed that Pinterest was responsible for a lift in sales of 23%. And so we're really excited about such preliminary results. We're looking forward to working with you and your teams on making this measurement of offline sales as well as online sales more systematic across our campaigns. And so to finish, just on an interesting note, it's been a roller coaster with this crisis so far, and we're seeing that digital is really revolutionizing the retail industry right now. Is there an advancement that you're particularly excited about or looking forward to?
Yeah, I think innovation is really important for us at Carrefour. We try to test all the products, the digital products, and we try to innovate in our creative formats and our measurement protocols. So, as I said, as I just said before, I think online to offline measurement is really important for us and is a big innovation. creative is also a really important point. So what I'd like to see in the future would be new ways of using the different features of Pinterest to better fit in the Pinterest universe with our creatives. And so, yeah, I'm excited about the new ad formats and the new contextual ads that we could make in the future.
Well, thank you, Mathieu. We look forward to actually working with you and your teams on taking our partnership to the next level. And it's very exciting time, I think, for us. So I want to thank you for taking the time and join me to discuss the evolution of the landscape in retail and how Pinterest fits within the Carrefour strategy. And I want to thank you all for your time, and I wish you a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian, for your insights. But at some point, my stomach really does tell me that I need food. And yours does too, I guess. Let's take a short break. See you back in 10 minutes.